Oh, they've done it! Steven Terodde, an instant hero! Can you believe this? Plenty attacking! No! The comeback is complete! A stunning second half from Schalke!
Blau und Weiß ein Leben lang. Hallo Leute, willkommen zum einzigen Schalke Podcast auf English. That's right, folks, officially the world's only English Schalke podcast. This is episode 135, SchalkeMerica. I'm your host, Richard Carmen. Joining me, as always, co-host Jack Mangan. Happy Victory Monday, sir.
Another one.
Victory
Monday again. For the last 5 now as well.
Yeah.
So things of late certainly a little bit better in terms of the points total that we're hauling in.
I am drinking Boulter's official beer, Angry Orchard. Mr. O is an angry tall man, so celebratory mood, right? This win is better than the last win in terms of how we feel, I think. Would you not agree? In terms of
that's an interesting way to start off. Let's talk about that. So
yeah.
I guess what I would say is this is exactly the kind of result that you would have wanted to see us get ultimately, because we're talking about an Ingolstadt team that's sitting bottom of the table. I think conceded like 20 goals through their first 8 matches prior to this one, something along those lines. So very much an opponent that we went into this game, feeling like we definitely need to get a result, and probably a pretty comprehensive one. And so to walk out with the 3-0, I think was what we expected. And I also feel like there's still, it depends on how, what's your overall opinion? Because I feel like there's still a lot of people that after that match are saying, hey, it's still a lot of more of the same. It's set pieces, it's Terodde, and in possession, there's still a lot of work to do going forward.
I would be part of that part of that grouping. I think this performance is better than the last one. Absolutely. I think the last game we looked very poor overall. Look at statistics. I mean, it was a very heavy foul game in that one. Not many shots to go about. It wasn't great overall. This game, we had a lot of possession. Still need some work in the final third, but set pieces we did well. Obviously, Terodde scored. Aydin, what can you say more about him? But still a room for a lot of improvement. I talk about it a lot during the watch along, is that we had a lot of possession, great, but what are we doing with it? Nothing. We're just playing. To be fair, Ingolstadt, and we'll get to this in the game, but they're dropped back the whole time. They're parking the bus, and so we were trying to draw them out by playing it back and forth between the defense and the midfield. So it's better. It's not there yet, and I think we still have a ways to go to get where we want to go. But sitting fourth in the table, not a bad place to be, and obviously it's better than last week. So.
Yeah, for sure. And ultimately, it's a clean sheet to celebrate, and those have been few and far between over the last couple of years, especially. So to have a game where it's happening for us on both ends of the pitch is always nice.
It is. But before we get to the happiness and the joy, there's a little bit of controversy I think we need to talk about, and in particular the goalkeeping situation, Jack. Obviously, the last 2 weeks, Mr. Frazel has been starting in net. Fairman has been dropped inexplicably. It hasn't taken too kindly to some of the players. Obviously, the fans have their voice, but the players not necessarily have been as happy. What have you heard that's been going on off the pitch?
Yeah, just over the last week, there's just some whispers kind of going around that the goalkeeper move wasn't explained in great detail internally to the rest of the team. So there wasn't like a lot of justification or conversation around it. And that potentially, at least several members of the team aren't particularly thrilled about the change. And I thought it was interesting and notable that when Marius Boulter scored early into this match, and we'll talk about that goal in a few minutes, that he basically ran, all the way back to the midfield line, kind of where the benches are, directly to Ralph Fairman, and kind of embraced him, which was an interesting move to go and celebrate with your goalkeeper who's not in the game. It's just a strange. I mean, it seemed like a very kind of intentional. Yeah, like a very intentional, like kind of act.
Yeah.
So, I just thought it was noteworthy, and I mean, you would hope that somebody like Fairman, who's been at the club as long as he is, who's a veteran, would be respected and would be kind of a big locker room guy, so to speak. I just thought it was interesting and something comment on. How did you feel about seeing that?
Yeah. Oh, before I get to my thoughts on this, for those who are joining us on Facebook Live tonight, congratulations. The world has not ended. I see someone liked it already, so that's good. We're there. So anyway, back to the
no
topic
disrespect to our Facebook viewers, but I'm pretty sure we would have been like okay with Facebook being down for a little bit longer.
Yeah, we just record ourselves and update later, right? Don't matter. No, that's all good. But yeah, back to Fairman. He's very much an influential player in the locker room. And like you said, many of the players spoke up, feeling like, hey, we didn't really get any answers. We talked about this last episode, how it's one thing if Fairman actually had a poor game, been dropping stuff several games in a row, cost us the game. He maybe played a little poorly, but he didn't cost us the game at all, necessarily. It was the whole team effort in the game that they're referencing, but no explanation. There's no injury, no real reason other than, hey, we want to try this Frazel kid, who's good, by the way. Yeah, he's great with his feet, but there was no real explanation there. And to do it to a legend as for Ralph Fairman, it's really unfair. And obviously, this team spoke up because of it. It's not quite the situation we had last year with Christian Gross and a bunch of the guys. Pretty much having a mutiny against the coach. It's not that, but it was obvious with that goal from Boulter going right to Fairman and hugging him that, look, this is our boy. You're messing with him, and when you mess with him, you mess with us. Obviously, Fairman is the leader in the locker room. Terodde is, the captain when Fairman's not out there, but Fairman is obviously a big figure in the locker room, and you can't expect nothing, no repercussions for messing with one of the influential players. We've seen this in all kinds of football locker rooms where you mess with an influential player, it has a dramatic effect on the team. It could be good and bad, right? The team could rally around like Schalke apparently did against Ingolstadt, or it could have an adverse effect, but we saw last year with Schalke, and the whole team just goes to shit. So hopefully it's still on the up and up. Good result. But yeah, it's an interesting decision between Gramozis dropping Fairman for Frazel. Luckily, Frazel's been working out.
It puts him in a difficult position too. Like, you wonder how his psychology is. The number 30 in goal, just seeing his own player score that and then run to the guy who's not on the pitch, whose job he just kind of took in terms of his starting responsibilities. That's got to be an awkward thing to see happen. And you wonder, how he's going to deal with that, whether that's going to affect him going forward. This is kind of one of the things we talked about too, is just sometimes when you make these like swaps mid-season somewhat prematurely, it just kind of puts everyone on edge, and it makes it really difficult to settle and have confidence. And that's not to say that, Martin hasn't done a good job early on into these first couple of games. He's looked pretty good for the most part. Didn't have as much to do in this one against Ingolstadt by the way of like clear-cut chances as he did in the match previous. But still, it's just awkward, and it seems like kind of avoidable when it wasn't necessary.
Excuse me, beer's getting to me now. I wonder, maybe that relationship with Frazel and Fairman is there. We noticed after the first game where Frazel won, they were next to each other in the locker room when they were holding up Longer's jersey. So maybe he, after the decision was made, he goes to Fairman. I was like, look, I had nothing to do with this. I support you 100%, but, because he picked me, I'm going to play, so, just to let you know I'm on your side. So maybe he was happy for him. Maybe, he's just doing what he can to make sure he keeps playing, but also, supports one of his teammates who's, highly influential on the team. So, yeah, it's a tough position for Frazel for sure, because you hear a lot of good things about him. He's obviously a decent goalkeeper, but to put in a situation like that with a club legend is never easy. I know we've seen similar things in the past with Hovides and some other players, who kind of got maligned by the team and pushed to the side. So we'll see how this transpires, but hopefully so far it hasn't affected the team too much. We can't blame the performances on this. They've been playing this way for a while. So let's see how it goes. But it was certainly an interesting move, especially with the celebration by Boulter, I think, after his goal. So.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. As long as you get results like this and there's not significant mistakes by, Frazel, it's going to become a non-story very quickly, because people aren't simply they're just not going to care. They're not going to be invested in it if there's nothing on the pitch that makes them kind of want to revert. So,
yeah, we got a comment here. It says, not really a Fairman fan, but as of now, I don't really see a Frazel as an improvement. Several small errors, some long passes in the ranks to the opponent, which I agree. Strong reactions, similar to Ralph for me. Yeah, I think the only difference really is he's better with his feet. That's about it. And Fairman obviously can bring a lot just from his character and his personality. But it's like I said, it's not a drop off, but it's not like, this is like a superstar that we had to bring in because why not? It's two comparable guys, and so at least we're not losing anything with dropping Fairman. But obviously, with the locker room implications, it could have a big impact depending on how people react. So, well, it's Victory Monday. Let's get into the game, Jack. Let's get into the starting 11, and that's the wrong screen. Look, great way to start here. So, all right. First for the home team, that would be us, Frazel in net. Obviously, we've been talking about it all podcast so far. Back three, similar back three: Tiao, Itakura, and Kaminsky. Flick would be in the holding position. Then you had Aydin on the right, Ovian on the left, and then Salazar, Drexler in the middle, along with Flick, and then obviously Terodde and Bolter up top. Flick back into the starting 11, Jack. This is more of a necessity than anything else because Valters, I think, picked up an injury, if I'm not mistaken. But thoughts on the starting 11?
Did actually, I don't know. I may have missed the injury news. That could have been interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think you and I are always going to be intrigued by seeing one of these younger guys get another opportunity. Flick mixed returns early in the season, but somebody that we liked last year. And part of the conversation around those mixed early returns is positionally where he was being played. And I think you and I have always maintained that he should be basically a number 6 and offers some things in possession from that position that potentially some other people don't. Not that like Paulson is like super poor in that regard or anything, but that's just kind of where we see Flick's value. We just haven't had many games early on where he's been able to really affect play in that way and kind of showcase those skills, which is what we had seen a glimpse of late last season prior to the relegation. So yeah, was excited to see what he would produce in this one. And then beyond that, it's basically kind of what you expect. Once again, Terodde both are up top, Drexler and Salazar centrally, who I think are going to be that pair centrally. Those are definitely the first choice guys there. And then Aydin, once again, which I think you and I are once again totally fine with, as we had said. I mean, certainly at replacement level for Cherlinov early on, and then kind of exceeded expectations to some extent last week and put in another really good performance this week. So I mean, I think it's safe to say, barring some sort of weird drop off and inconsistency that you can sometimes see in a young player, that Aydin kind of may have very rapidly actually put himself in the starting position going forward.
Yeah, and it's funny if you're not following us during the live streams, during the watch alongs for the Schalke games, you should, because we sometimes engage in a really good conversation. And one of the conversations in particular was about the right wing position that Aydin, Cherlinov, Mr. Timo Becker, who we haven't seen much this season. So we were talking about that, and while like Jack and I were big fans of Timo Becker, at present, where would he fit in the lineup, right? The back three seems pretty good right now. Itakura has been playing amazing lately, especially this last game. Tiao as well. Kaminsky's been solid. So where would Becker fit in that back three? And then the next thing you're thinking, okay, he's going to play on the wing, but Cherlinov is pretty good offensively. He's lacking defensively. Aydin's, what we've seen so far, is good offensively and defensively in possession. He's doing the job right now. It looks like it's his position possibly. And then, it's probably Becker over Ranfil, but it's tough call for Timo Becker. It's a guy who I definitely want to see more after the season he had last year, but I don't know where he would fit in the lineup right now, Jack. Obviously you mentioned Drexler and Salazar in the middle. Becker doesn't even play that position anyway. If he plays anywhere in the middle, it's going to be in Flick's position, but obviously, with Latza coming back, that's going to probably be his position again, and Valters did decent last week. Do you see a place for Becker in this team outside of, deputizing for one of the back three?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think part of it is that we just haven't seen enough of him this season to know whether or not he actually deserves to be in this starting lineup, whether his play would merit that. I mean, we know what he looked like kind of at a Bundesliga level, which was, as we have repeatedly said on this podcast, along with Malik Chow, one of our better players, one of our more competent and consistent players last year. So you would imagine that if he was playing at that level, that would continue in the second division as it has for Malik Chow. I mean, like, he hasn't been unseated, and he, once again, rock solid as he typically is. So it's interesting that he's been, kind of falling out of favor here. But yeah, I mean, given how things have been over the last, 5-6 games or so, after the first couple, once some things have started sort of settling down to some extent, I don't see him in the back line taking anyone's spot necessarily. And, as far as like wing back role goes, I don't know if that's his best position. You could put him there, but I mean, he's certainly not gonna. I don't know. If it was a back four, maybe. Especially if you wanted a little bit more physicality
Yeah.
in that position because Aydin is slightly undersized and is so Becker might match up favorably against certain types of opponents. But yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting. He's randomly. I think most of us looking at the team would be like, yeah, it's actually okay at the moment that he's probably not involved. Would you agree?
I would agree. I think if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And I think of all the pieces right now, we actually got a pretty good idea of who the starting 11 should be, and they've been playing well enough. I mean, obviously, Ovejan is playing perfect on the left-hand side. The back three are playing very well. I kept saying, well, maybe put him in the back three, but the way Itakura played the last game, did you hear every time he made a tackle or stole the ball, the crowd erupted. They loving this guy. And Tiao is obviously fantastic. He's, one of the vice captains, and Kaminsky, his passing ability is just, it's so effective when we try to get down the left-hand side. So, yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm with you. I say just keep him to the sideline unless there's injury or something.
Doesn't that make you feel good about where we are at the moment, though? At least from a depth perspective, in the sense that we have Timo Becker if we need him, but we also have Salif Sane, who can come back into the back three.
Forgot about that guy.
Yeah, and we're already like reasonably happy with. I mean, Kaminsky's been a pleasant surprise. I think there's an argument to be made that he's maybe been like defensively the weakest of those three, but it's been fine. He hasn't been bad, and has done some nice things also in possession at times. But like, the fact you can add Salif Sane in there, and then the fact that as far as that midfield three goes, technically, in terms of how we started the season, you have two starters that are injured or suspended. Sorry, Paulson threw the red card, and then Danny Latza the injury. Now, do Danny Latza and Paulson kind of walk back in? I think Paulson probably does for the time being, because I don't think they're convinced about who plays the six. Like, I don't think they're going to give it to Flick. But it makes you. There are a couple guys that could reasonably jump back in the starting 11. That it definitely makes you feel good about our depth going forward for the rest of the season.
Yeah, the only place really lacking in depth at the moment is the striker position, especially with Hoppy leaving at the end of the transfer window. So that's really the one place I would say. And honestly, you could probably put Cherlinov there as a second striker. Maybe you put Bolter up top if you want to rest Terodde, or if you rest Bolter, Cherlinov can jump in there, or even Salazar. Who knows? So, yeah, we had some good depth overall, I think, and obviously goalkeeper we do too. So, I'm happy with the starting 11. The big thing for me going into this game is not that I'm worried about Ingolstadt, because we saw the record coming in, but because of that record, they got a new manager, Andre Schubert. Anytime a team gets a new manager, it tends to uplift the team a little bit, and they play above expectations. And that was my worry that was going to happen. We'll go through the lineup real quick, because that's about all we're going to talk about them in this game. In goal, Buntic, he played okay. Back four of Gebauer, Antotic, Roseler, and Franke. Two pivots of Preisinger and Linsmeyer, and then attacking trio of Eckert, Schmidt, and Bibilia, led by Kuchka. Overall, this team was lacking, I think. We saw this throughout the match, but there wasn't really, couple glimpses of attacks. But overall, they're hurting a lot, and you can see why they've been struggling and giving up so many goals this season, Jack.
Yeah, I thought Kuchka and Iensa on the right-hand side did reasonably well, but yeah, there was not a whole lot of standout performances in this one. Struggled to create clear-cut chances. I mean, the chances they did have, they weren't, when you look back at them, super dangerous, super direct, forcing our keepers into there's not multiple goalkeepers, sorry, forcing our keeper into big time saves consistently. I mean, you can definitely see why they potentially needed to change at the helm, and bit of struggle for them. Didn't get any easier against us.
Every time I hear somebody say big time, I go, big time, big time. Anyway, enough of that. So really, the first 20 minutes of the game, we weren't sure how the team was going to come out. And it didn't look like it definitely was. We were dominating in terms of possession. We had all the ball pretty much. They had a couple glimpses here and there, but they kept giving it to us. The press in the game is what I'm going to rail about in this, or going to be happy about it, because every time we press, we caused a turnover in this game, it seemed like. And it continued from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. So we caused turnovers, kept possession, but we weren't really creating any chances. And it wasn't for the first 20 minutes. There's really no honest, really chances. Terodde had a chance really early on to get a goal, but really it was nothing to speak about until 24th minute, out of the blue. Bolter in no man's land takes a shot from distance. I thought it was Drexler because how far back he was. Takes a shot, scores past the keeper. Keeper, in my opinion, probably should have had a good goal by Bolter. We talked about we need to see him score some goals. Good for him. Even you could tell, even when he's happy, he looked angry, right? He's going to run. He's run over to Pharrell Fairman, but thoughts on the goal and, in my opinion, coming out of the blue, really.
Yeah, it came from kind of Zalazar initially getting into kind of a dangerous area, and that's part of the problem with our system early on in the season is just that we don't involve sort of those dual eights, if you want to call them that, however you want to label those two central midfielders. We don't build centrally through them and involve them enough. It's just the center backs passing out to one of the wing backs and back and forth and that kind of cul-de-sacking. So some of the moments of danger actually came when we were able to involve those guys. But anyway, but it looked like maybe Salazar, when he received it, had a chance to kind of turn and drive into the box, and he kind of didn't and laid it off to Bolter, who wasn't in a particularly good position, and he was kind of caught sort of flat-footed stationary, and he kind of squared it up to shoot, and you're like, there's not really a whole lot on here. Like, there's not a great angle. It's from deep. There's a defender in front of him. And he somehow got it past the first defender and just kind of like dragged it low across the ground. And to his credit, right into the corner. And he beat the keeper. It was perfectly placed. I mean, it wasn't like, like hit with a ton of power or anything. And like I said, it was, kind of daisy cutter on the ground. Really well done. And props to him, because the last couple of weeks we talked about him not being as effective as we had seen early in the season, how we needed that. Good for him early on to get that goal. And then obviously, as we talked about, runs and celebrates with Fairman.
I think it was interesting that on this goal, all three goal scorers touched the ball. So you saw a give and go between Aydin and Terodde, which was great on the right-hand side. And ultimately, Aydin found Salazar. Salazar turned around, slid right over to Bolter, like you said, and he went and scored that goal. So it was a good play that kind of led up to it, but it came out of nowhere, because up to that point, we had created no opportunities. And as happy as we were for that goal and to be up in the game after such a slow start in terms of chances created, we all knew we wanted to see another goal. We were begging for it almost, because these 1-goal leads are never good for us, and it doesn't matter how bad the other opposition is playing. If it's close, there's a chance that they can come back. Look at the Iceberg-Auch match, right, where we pretty much ahead in the whole game. They tied it with the 85th, 86 minutes. So go into halftime by that score line. I wasn't terribly impressed. I mean, I did like the possession. We were keeping the ball away from them, but we weren't really doing anything. And I think part of it, and I alluded to this earlier, is that Ingolstadt were playing, they're basically parking the bus. 11 guys behind the ball, really. And it seemed like we were passing back and forth, specifically between the center backs, just trying to draw them out. Even Frazel, when they passed it back to Frazel, he was just waiting there for guys to come at him just to get him out of their shell. So, and that's part of it. But if you want to be a good team, you have to be able to break those situations down. And I didn't feel Schalke were doing that. And that was my one big gripe for the first half. What about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like we need to come up with a few new, kind of pre-orchestrated sequences for those sorts of situations. Some pre-planned moves, interchanging of players, that we're not just kind of in that sort of static shape and possession and kind of doing the same things as we talked about, just the center back out to a wing back and then back, and nothing happening. But I mean, overall, Ingolstadt not super dangerous in the first half, and so maybe we left a little bit to be desired, a little bit underwhelming on our end of things, but you do go into the halftime with the 1-goal lead, and certainly could be worse.
Yeah, could be worse, because you could be playing Darmstadt this weekend, who won like 6-1, 6-0, something crazy like that. So
as we're watching, because those games were taking place simultaneously, and it's just like the score would go up and be like 3-1, and then like 30 seconds later it's like 4-1, and then 2 minutes later it's 5-1, and then it's 6-1. I mean, what the score ended up being, I did stop at 6. I think it was 6, right?
Yeah, 6. And you're watching the feed, and you keep hearing a ding every time the goal scored. Ding. You're like, what, again?
Yeah,
it's like, oh, it was crazy.
It was incredible. Yeah, it just kept being the same match.
So 1-0 at halftime. Coming out of the break, we were there's like a 5-minute stretch where Ingolstadt really came on. It came out of nowhere, really. They had done nothing all game long, but all of a sudden, this 5-minute stretch, there was continuous pressure, wave after wave in our zone. We were pinned back. There was a moment where the ball comes down the left wing side. They cross it in the middle. Their striker was right there. Frazel, to his credit, was right there and made the save. And that was a big save for us, because it ultimately, as that wave kind of ended, we kind of went through the ups and downs of that. We ended up regaining control of the ball. Eventually, we go back down to their end. We get a set piece, and we're all looking for Terodde, maybe Bolter, one of the big guys down there, right? You're not looking for the smallest guy on the pitch, Aydin. But the corner comes in. Aydin kind of like steps back and does this whole Ralph Macchio thing, karate kick thing, and boom, a sensational goal, Jack. We were talking about that. We were both like laughing and celebrating at the same time. It was just a ridiculous goal that you did not expect.
Yeah, I wasn't in the live stream with you, but yeah, it sounds like we both had the same reaction anyway. As I said on Twitter, the Karate Kid. I mean, like, great goal, but at the same time, like, what on earth was that finish? Like, I was laughing and like celebrating it simultaneously because you're just like trying to wrap your head around like how he even approached that shot the way that he did. But yeah, he kind of snuck into this pocket of space and no one really picked him up, and it was something of a high, like chest height almost sort of ball, and he was kind of caught in this weird position where he didn't know if to head it or whatever. And yeah, he gets both feet off the ground and does this weird karate scissor kick thing, volley, and kind of hits it off like the right side of his right foot, and gets a hold of one and gets it past the keeper. Incredible goal. So 2 weeks in a row now with direct goal involvement, which is pretty impressive and pretty useful to have from your right wing back, particularly when you take into consideration how good and consistent Oweyan's been on the left-hand side. The one who played that ball in, by the way, another assist for him this season. I mean, he's gonna end up with more assists than Caligiuri, like by the end of the season, probably, if we're being honest. Like, some of those good seasons that
you got Terodde, that's more than likely, right?
I mean, that certainly helps. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, like, so if you can already have that kind of consistency, we're kind of wondering, all right, is it Cherlinov? Like, who's going to be the guy on the right-hand side of the field? It's going to end like last couple games. I mean, you got to be real pleased with that kind of production creatively, especially because, as we continuously said, there hasn't been enough centrally going on. You need somebody else to pick up that slack. So yeah, really impressive from him, man.
Yeah, no, it was a sensational goal that none of us really expected to come. We obviously had the same interaction. I know a lot of people were just going crazy when they saw this goal, and it was like the best place shot, but it was so powerful. The goal couldn't stop it at all. And you watching the Nord curve after the goal. I mean, they were just going nuts. It was a great goal. I mean, that's probably one of the best goals.
His silhouette has to be the new like Bundesliga 2 logo.
Yes,
you gotta get that silhouette.
Yes. If I was any good with graphic work like that, I'd probably do that, but I can't. So. But maybe I can find someone. Let's see. Ryan says here, I lost my mouse. There it is. Ryan says, man, I can't see this past the 3-5-2 anymore. We really need to get our midfielders more into the game. Yeah, no, we talked about the last episode or the episode before where we need someone to kind of step up and be the offensive midfielder that we're looking for to create those opportunities. Right now, we're really relying on the two wingbacks, right? Aydin in this moment and Ovejan on the left.
And what I would say though is like I do think that like both Drexler and Zalazar the last 2 weeks have had very good games, and they've done well. And actually, I mean, like Zalazar had multiple really nice balls in this game that neither of them came off, but like where he created opportunities with a nice through ball, and once he kind of got into space and was able to take somebody on the dribble initially, and you just wish we could find something, from a system standpoint. From what we're doing in possession, that the Grimaces can manipulate to get the ball into those players' feet a little bit more consistently. And it just seems like they're taken out of the equation in possession so often, and everything that we're trying to do is kind of bypassing them. So, I mean, what I did see of them in this game, I liked a lot. And they're also doing a lot of the hard yards and everything. It's just, I think we need to find a way to get them involved in the game a little bit more and in like better areas more consistently, if that makes sense.
It does, and I think it's like we're trying almost too hard to be tiki-taka Barcelona from the Messi days, where we just pass around, lull you to sleep, and go for the jugular. We do the pass, but we don't really create any opportunities. I think that's the big thing we're missing at the moment is creating these chances with the possession. Yeah, it's great to do the direct pass or to get the counter every now and then, but when you have the ball, you really want to create some opportunities with the possession, not just pass it around and hope for the best, hope for a turnover from press or something like we saw in this match. So yeah, there's still much to be done there in the midfield. But I think, like you mentioned, Drexler and Salazar have been playing better the last 2 games. They both have their opportunity. I mean, we'll get to Drexler in a minute because what he did was brilliant on the third one. But just being involved in the offensive end, we've seen a lot of guys who are passive and then don't push up. At least Drexler's been pushing up with Salazar, so that'll help out as well with the wingbacks cutting in and doing their thing. So it's a work in progress. Like I said on the watch along, it's better to be in the situation we're at right now in 4th place, 3 points behind St. Pauli, and then, get hot to the end of the season and then really be a chance to like start pulling away from teams, as opposed to being really hot now like Regensburg and maybe dropping off and then struggling to finish out the season, so
yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah. I mean, like I said, 4 of the last 5 have been wins, and now suddenly we find ourselves going into this international break in 4th place, which is significantly better than where I kind of thought we would be at this point, and where we kind of had been most of the time. So if we can keep that going, it's gonna be big for sure. Let's see what Glenn has to say here.
So Glenn says, it'll be interesting what we look like when Latza comes back in the squad. And so my question to the chat is, once Latza comes back, once Paulson is back, who would you rather start in that middle? If you had all your choices there, Paulson, does he come back right in? Is it Latza? Like, we were talking about maybe Paulson jumps right back in, but maybe it's Latza, maybe it's Wouters, maybe it's Flick, maybe you want to go with the youngster. I'm curious who the chat wants to see. But I think for me, Paulson probably deserves it at the moment. Not to discredit Latza at all. He's a team captain, and he did good. He did well, couple
Let's talk about Flick for a second. Did you like what you saw from him in this one? Because I liked what I saw from him, especially
better than the last game. Yes,
and I think this was probably the first time this season where we really saw an actual performance from him. We were like, okay, that's what we think he can bring to the side, and if we can kind of maximize that, then it's an actual thing to consider. Because that part of his game, I do feel like is an improvement over Paulson to an extent.
I think when all the midfielders are playing at their best, including Flick, what we saw last year, he's the best tackler of the group. And I think that's what we want to see, brought with whatever else that we saw from this last game, with the possession, with the passing, can help out defensively as well. He has the potential to be that guy, but he's not right there. This past game was better than the one before that. It's an improvement. It's his best game of the season probably so far. But he still has ways to go, and he needs the pitch time to do that. And maybe he comes off as a sub, or I don't know. We'll see what Grimotsis does. But in the long run, it's going to be Flick. But right now, I think in the short term, you're probably going to go with Paulson or maybe Latza, I guess. So it's a good argument to have. Good choices to have at your disposal with what Schalke has at the moment. So we got the goal up 2-0. Great. We're sitting very happy. We knew that Mr. Terodde was still 1 goal from tying the record, 2 from breaking it. And you knew they were trying to feed him. They were trying to feed him all game long. Had several opportunities, but finally, through some fantastic pressing between Ovejan and Bulter, they did a little give and go with each other. Bulter finds Drexler, who by all credit, could have taken a shot. He was wide open. He had the angle. He could have shot. Anybody else probably would have shot. It was Bulter, he would have shot. But what does he do? Finds Terodde, who's unmarked somehow. Everyone's looking at Drexler because it looks like he's in prime spot. Slides it over to Terodde. Terodde's not going to miss that. Ties the record with that goal. Just a wonderful play, in my opinion, Jack, because the press is what caused that goal, the turnover, the quick passing between Ovejan and Bulter to Drexler, and then Drexler with the heads up to find Terodde there.
I mean, how good is Terodde, man? I mean, just the best player. Just to piss everyone off that's annoyed about how much attention he's getting. No, that goal very much one of the easier ones he's probably scored of those 150 whatever. Certainly, and certainly not the hardest worked for him. But yeah, as you said earlier, at times, yeah, our kind of highlight and confrontation, some of the pressure we were able to put on them was yielding some positive things. And you saw, yeah, Bulter and Ovejan kind of pinching. Well, it was a Gebauer. I forgot who it was. The right back, maybe, who was, that was getting kind of cycled out there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
he ultimately makes kind of a weak pass, like kind of a bad decision and not particularly convincing. That goes right to Ovejan. Yeah, dishes it to Bulter. The thing I liked is the second that ball leaves the foot of Ovejan going to Bulter, Drexler's already running. Like Drexler read that and anticipated that so well. The second that ball gets played, he's making a run off of it to be available to Bulter. He's not waiting until Bulter has the ball to start making that run. He's direct, sprints in behind. Bulter recognizes it very quickly, plays it in, and then this is what we talk about, like we forcing defenders into decisions. And at that moment, he's like, I can mark Terodde and let the guy go 1-on-1 with the keeper. I can try to come over and help, and ultimately he decides to try to help his keeper out, and leads to basically a quick side foot and then wide open net. So yeah, well worked. Okay, you just wish we could do that from possession a little bit more. Some nice sequences like that. But I think it's interesting because that moment, maybe not the best example, but a good example of it is, the one thing that we've seen a lot of people talking about this season is there are times when you can see that like the players have this in them.
Yes.
They can connect. They can, when they kind of go off script, particularly in transition, they can play a couple nicely weighted balls in a row, making runs off of each other, and suddenly it's like very flowing, and like it's one of those moments where it's like the first pass comes in and there's that like anticipation, and the second pass is a good pass and the crowd gets hyped, and then the third pass is like exactly what it needs to be, and then suddenly we're in the final third, and like so often in the past, like we just can't connect those couple passes, or like there's one of them that's errant and kind of off, and it kind of ruins the whole momentum of the move. And there was a number of times in the second half in this game where there were some nice like back heels and stuff happening on the sidelines, people making runs off each other, and this goal was another good example of that. And like I said, I just wish we could maybe have a little bit more of that in possession as opposed to kind of on these broken transitional plays. But it's nice to see that the guys have the ability to synchronize in that way. And play with each other and get creative like that. And hopefully we can find a way to exploit them more regularly.
And I think what I like about the most of it was that it was quick reaction, quick pass. It wasn't like sitting around and think about it. A big thing we harped on with Hoppy in particular was like he was taking too long. We saw the play and he just took too long to make the decision. Boulter, no hesitation. He just quickly slid it over to Drexler, and Drexler slid it over to Terodde. So, quick action, quick play, it came so natural. It seemed like you said, we've seen this every glimpses here and there. And if they can just string it together, gain more confidence, I think if they continue this trend, they can get to where we would like them to see. I mean, Gramosius will still have to do some things tactically to make it available for them. Maybe they need more freedom when they go offensive end. I don't know, but maybe that's the thing. Maybe they're too structured going up. I don't know. There's something there, but hopefully they figure it out and get more of that free-flowing style that we see every now and then, like they did on this goal, and create more opportunities. All we want is to see them create chances, and then we know Terodde's going to put away Boulter. It's just getting those opportunities. I mean, up to that point, Terodde has been quiet because no one's been feeding him the ball. All he needs is a chance, as we see, and he'll put it away. So up 3-0, game's done. At this point, we're seeing can he get the record. Couple chances here and there. There was a chance late in the game where I thought it was Terodde, wide open from the net and misses wide right, and I realized it's Peringer. But he could have made a 4-0 there, just missed it. But I think it was
Wasn't that another one of Malik
Chow's
Chow's like marauding moments into the final third where he was kind of taking people on?
Yes. So I love this in the game. Throughout the game, both Tiao and Itakura in particular, both of them would take their marauding runs. And in particular, Tiao was in love in doing that. And a couple plays where he ran up, came back, all of a sudden cut back, and he was one of the first guys on the press. You're like, where did he come from? So you love seeing that from Tiao and Itakura. But yeah, I thought Tiao did particularly well in terms of picking his moments when to make those rushes and then making those passes. I thought him and Aydin worked very well. He worked very well with Flick as well. And the team responded when he pushed up. Flick or someone else would drop back to cover him, which is important because you don't want to get caught on the counter should you lose the ball.
Yeah, for sure. And if we could see more of that on the dribble too, I think that's a good thing. We talked already this season about some of the aerial balls that have been played from the back line, being able to bypass a line or two of defense when things are a little bit, bogged down. And occasionally having somebody like a Chow who can break one line and kind of open things up for the midfield, and once again start forcing defenders into decisions, create some advantages, some overloads and stuff. It's definitely useful, and we haven't had. I mean, Ozan Kabak did that occasionally. Yeah, he was decent at that. But in general, I mean, I think once again, like Matip is kind of the last guy that we look at as somebody who did that consistently, with the ball at his feet, being able to kind of maraud from the back there. So it's nice to see a little bit of that happening with Itakura, even though there's been a couple of times we felt like he's maybe chosen the wrong moment to do it. But Itakura and Xiao certainly both look like they can contribute in that way.
Since we're talking about Itakura, Ryan mentioned Itakura was insane. I think for me, if it wasn't for Aydin or Terodde getting his record-tying goal, Itakura is the man of the match for me. He was, in my opinion, phenomenal. As I mentioned earlier, anytime he made several crunching tackles, game-saving or play-breaking tackles, and the crowd would go nuts when he did it. I mean, he just did it constantly back and forth. He was insane, as Ryan says. I thought his play this is the best game he's played for us. I can see why, City, obviously he played as part of City. But I thought this game, making tackles, intercepting passing balls, making runs up, I thought he had a very good game outside of scoring goal. What were your thoughts on Itakura's performance in this one?
Yeah, good once again. And as you said, not just good in possession as you would expect potentially for somebody from like a Man City, kind of situation. But yeah, going to ground, very good. I think several weeks ago we mentioned, I forget what game it was there. I know there was one play in particular where he was tracking somebody down like the right hand side of the pitch, and he made like what was a totally clean and fluid, but simultaneously like crunching tackle. And it was like perfectly timed, beautiful, just took the guy out. And the fans loved it. And that's what I love about the fans being back in the stadium, the supporters being in the Veltins Arena after this long kind of COVID break and everything, is when they actually like put their body on the line and make those kind of like big time effort plays and go to ground. Those can turn into big momentum moments. And the more feedback that they get from the crowd, probably the more willing they are to kind of put that effort in, and kind of builds on itself, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy to some extent. Yeah. And so I always love when the fans get involved in that way. And it's something good that you're seeing from Itakura so far, which once again, back to the fact that if Sané comes back at some point this season, because like Kaminsky hasn't been like somebody like he needs to be benched. Like, God, we need Sané to come back. He's been so bad. That hasn't been the case. I mean, like, so even if like maybe he's the guy that gets dropped out of those three, which seems like could be the case, I mean, like, you're really happy having that guy, as a rotation guy at a minimum. So, I think now that our back line has settled down a little bit in recent matches, we'll see if we can keep this going. But, like, after some early season jitters, it's settled down a little bit, and you're starting to feel pretty confident about what we have here in the second division.
What I like about the back three that maybe Salif Sané doesn't bring, passing ability. We know Thiago can pass, Itakura can pass, and Kaminsky's obviously already got a couple assists this season. So he can pass the long distance passes. So that's something they all bring. They all play similar in that way. But yeah, it's a hard choice right now. And Salif Sané obviously brings so much, and he's very talented himself. So yeah, it's a good problem to have, I guess, if you're Schalke. But yeah, it's you mentioned the crowd. The crowd was getting into it every time Itakura made a tackle. Obviously, if you didn't think they were in the game before Aydin scored, they were fully in the game, and that propelled the team to keep going on. They scored another goal with Terodde and almost with Peringer. So, I think the attendance was only like 26,000, 27,000, but it sounded like it was full. So imagine when they get back to full capacity, they're really going to be chomping at the bit. So, good game overall. We win 3-0. Shots were fairly even, because we didn't create opportunities that we said. Like I said. For me, still lacking in the final third, and I still see Ingolstadt really provided no threat to us. But the glimpses we saw, the one time that they broke us was direct play, whether down the wing side was Kaminsky's side or down the middle. They tried to beat us on the offsides. That seems to be our weakness still. So it's direct play in between the defenders, and I get worried as we get maybe St. Pauli a little bit later, maybe not so much Hanover, but. Teams that have really good strikers who are very intelligent. We've seen this with Regensburg and also with what's his face from Karlsruhe. These guys can find that seam, and then if you get the ball over the top, they're gonna have a clear chance on goal.
Yeah, for me, it's been this weird combination of like, I think generally if they're trying to attack centrally in possession, it's not particularly effective and we do a good job. But occasionally it's when somebody makes that like really darting direct run and splits the center backs and able to play like a ball over the top or something that we seem to have trouble tracking that and dealing with it. But beyond that, I do feel like we've been a little bit weak from the wing. And we've allowed a few too many dangerous balls coming in from wide areas. Those balls have been able to reach the back post and like those back post runners a little bit too consistently. And that's been worrying that we haven't been able to disrupt that at some point in its flight, like before it gets there. So those have been kind of like nerve wracking and worrying at times. But and like I said, overall, we've settled down a little bit. And, if we can keep that going, I think we'll be in decent shape as long as we stay healthy, because Terodde is going to keep doing those things. We have what appears to be several other players now outside of Oweyan contributing and doing something creative at some point in the match, even if the overall chance creation from the system in possession isn't what we would like it to be ideally. So it'd be interesting to keep a tab on it and see if we can build on this coming out of the international break.
I think my one we got a comment in the chat that says every game I wonder more and more how we were able to get Itakura. I mean, yeah, you could start seeing why he's linked with City or part of City, but still the one of the main things we see with Itakura and all the defenders is that they lose their train of thought every now and then. Maybe not so much in Ingolstadt, but we've seen it in other games. Lose their train of thought, and the strikers are able to get behind them, or they don't misread a guy and leave a guy wide open when they shouldn't. So yeah, we'll see. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. Another victory Monday, gotta love it. It's international breaks, so we're going to be on hiatus with Schalke as well. We come back with Hanover 96, so that should be an interesting game. They're close to us in the table. We are sitting currently in fourth place, as I mentioned. We are 3 points behind St. Pauli, led by Mr. Bergstaller, who's scoring goals this year. Look at that. But they're 19 points on first place. We're in fourth on 16.
What's Hanover, 13?
Hanover is 13 with 11. So they lost this weekend, I
Yeah.
think. So
And then we got Dresden and Heidenheim as well, right, coming up. And so
Heidenheim's going to be the interesting game. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting stretch of games because what Dresden's sitting at like 11th, but they're like 3 points off of where we are, I think, if that's correct. And Heidenheim is a little bit higher up the table as well.
They're
So
6, yeah.
I think it's a stretch of games that could kind of go either way. Looking at kind of the recent performance and everything, if we can build on this and find a way to get a couple good results out of those 3, I think we'll be pretty happy with how things are looking at the moment. But I do worry about some of those mid-table encounters and everything. They're definitely not a cakewalk in the second division.
It's funny, the 2 teams that we struggled the most with this season, outside of Hamburg, it's Regensburg and Karlsruhe. They're both 2 and 3 in the table or something like that. So it's for obvious reason they're good teams. We need to play better against them. But we talked about this 3-game stretch which ends with Hanover. That if we got 7 points, we would be happy. We're at 6 points right now, so we need to at least get I think we can get a win, but at least get a draw in that match to really be happy. But we're in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you this result, like I said earlier, is just exactly what we needed. Too often we've talked about how we just don't get put in the performances against the lower end of tables that you think we should, given what our aspirations are, given how we think we are. We play to the level of our competition, and so it was very refreshing to go into a game bottom of the table opponent of Ingolstadt and leave with a clean sheet, several goals in the back of the net. That's taking care of business, and that's what you need to do in this division if you want to have a chance of getting promoted. Those are the performances you have to put against those kind of teams. You can't mess around. You can't drop too many of these opportunities. So well done.
Yeah, we've been enjoying doing these watch-alongs and live streams during the games. The next game, which is after the international break, is going to be on a Friday again. So we'll do our best, but no promises there. But it is a Friday game, midday game for us in the States. It's a evening time, dinner time game over there in Germany. So we'll see how we can do with that game. But that's the next game is on a Friday, the 15th against Hannover 96. So anything else you want to touch on, Jack, before we wrap this bad boy up?
No, that's it for me.
Yeah, we win. It's a
good mood hanging into the break. It's always nice as opposed to when you're like, on a bad run of form and you're like, oh man, like.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm good with that. Sounds good to me. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you sign up for the Schalke US newsletter. You can do that by going to our website. I don't know what the website is. SchalkeMerica.com, and you can sign up for the Schalke US newsletter that way. Get our gear, get Schalke's gear. I still need to get the red jersey, the throwback from 1904, from the early days. So I'll work on that. And I've got to work on Schalke TV as well, but that's another story. Keep tuning in each week as we bring you the latest from the Royal Blues. If there are any topics you'd like us to discuss, please let us know at SchalkeMerica. Jack, anything you want to plug, or where can our followers find you on social media?
No, yeah, we got to do our weekly Schalke TV shout out, man. As you said, I mean, the English and Spanish accounts retweeted me this weekend, so I know that they know that we exist. They got to hook us up with that Schalke TV. We will pay you for it. We just want to, the access.
Yeah.
But yeah, for more banger tweets like that one out of the blue every 6 months, outside of like the black void that is my Twitter feed normally, I never really post anything. At JMMangan, JMMANGAN on the Twitter machine.
Thank you for all those who follow us tonight on our show, live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and also Twitter as well. So thank you again for all your support. You can follow us all over any of the social medias. Our podcast can be found everywhere that you can listen to podcasts. So definitely thank you again for all the support. We will catch you after the international break. Enjoy it. Glück auf.